Sir Mark Baxter.
How are you?
Excellent. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
It's so cool to see you, and thank you so much for coming on this thing.
Uh, and what is this thing? What are we doing?
This started out as creative chats because I wanted some adult company, and now it's turned into a podcast.
I love it. That's excellent.
And I remember attending one of your clinics at Berkeley and just getting such a kick out of everything that you taught and everything that you know. And I just thought, now this is a creative person I'd love to spend a little bit more time with. And with everybody's schedules being as they are, this is a cool way to do it.
Oh, that's an awesome idea. And that was a long time ago, that clinic at Berkeley.
Really? Was it?
18 years ago, something like that.
Really? No, come on.
I think so.
Really? God almighty.
Scary to think.
Wow. So what coast are you on at the moment?
I'm right outside of Boston.
Oh, okay. Me too. We could have done this in person. No. Some people do ask me to do it in person, but I don't have the whole video thing set up kind of thing, you know?
Well, you have a beautiful backdrop.
Well, it's actually a backyard.
Yep.
It's literally there. The dog's on the ground. And, yeah. So, you know, it takes a lot to be a fabulously creative person and to then turn that all into teaching materials, but that's what you've been doing. How did that even begin? I mean, I knew you were and still are a singer yourself.
Yeah, it started with wanting to be a rock star like everybody else, at a very young age, and feeling feeling like music was a safe haven, I think is the best way to put it. And in not only music but art, I love to draw, love to build things, love to just follow that muse wherever it led. So with very pragmatic parents, I was always warned against following that path too far, and just worried about me. They kept trying to pull me back in, and it was I'm one of five. I have four siblings, and each one of us was given, sort of like told to pick up an instrument. So my oldest sister took flute, next was piano, and my brother, older, took guitar up. And it was supposed to be to round out our education. It was my parents thought it was just a really good balance to the normal studies, was to, dip your toe in music.
Wow.
And I ruined it for my little sister because I chose drums. And I chose to become a musician, and they were like, "No, no, no! This was just supposed to be to fill in, the little spaces in between." And so it was my brother on guitar. So when you have a big brother that you're desperate to hang out with, then you take the other instrument that could make a band. And so with a neighbor that played bass guitar, we started a band at a very young age, and nobody was brave enough to sing. So I said, I'll do it. And
Oh, wow.
I was just naivete more than anything. And so just to make things work,
About wanting to.
yeah. And so it is, that's the organic, origin. And then from there, I was, I was big on energy. I was big on utilizing my sort of raw talent, is the cliche term. And I wondered how some people could become so skilled, because obviously I'm watching my heroes and feeling the gap between what I was doing and what they were doing. And so the questions I had were always like, how does somebody get to be that good? And and I knew how they were moving me, and I wondered how somebody could attain that ability to move somebody and make them feel what I was feeling when I would listen to my favorite songs. So I was just very enamored with the arts in general, as to being able to give somebody an inner peace that you'd never meet and never, have anything in common with, but yet your work has that kind of impression. Um, Writers do the same thing, you know, novels, just any piece of the arts to me is just the most noble pursuit because it has such an incredible ripple effect.
Wow. Yeah, and we don't know who we're reaching and how many people it's helped, but it is amazing that there's some kind of energy transferred, and yet yours became very tangible because then, like me, you began to teach all
Yeah,
this.
I asked a lot of questions, and because I wasn't getting better, and so I was kind of leveled off in a plateau, and
Huh.
I was feeling, you know, especially with drums, in back in the '70s. Uh, I was as good as the normal drummers in the '70s, but then in the '80s, drummers got really good. Like really good. And it's because of the drum machine, because of the Lin, you know, the programming. So drummers either, you know, became as solid as a drum machine could be plus feel. So it was like it really hijacked their skill set. And some of them dove in and rose to the challenge. And I said, I still like '70s drummers. They're a little loose, they're a little free spirited, and their time isn't so good. And I've gotten better over the years, but it was just the I became fascinated with the questions more more so than the actual skill building, and so took a year. I joined a band. We were uh, right out of high school. And I had played all through high school, but I joined a professional band. I just got off the road with Kiss right after high school. Thought that was my destiny. I'm going to be, you know, a superstar here. And that band quickly fell apart during that gap year, if you will, for me. And it was a really good education in the real music business. And so with the band was being supported by a management company, and the manager went to jail for extortion, and the label dropped us, and the sheriff came knocking on our door, our house, and we were evicted. And so it was just a quick education in the realities of living as an artist.
Oh,
So then I called my father back up and said, I think I'll take you up on that offer to go to college. Just my dream here just blew apart. So I needed a little coasting place. And when I went to school, I thought it was useless to get a degree for teaching because the one thing I was sure of is that I was never going to become a teacher. Yeah, it's out of the question. Exactly. I'm sure so many of us the same. And so after 2 years, I was musically illiterate. I could not read a note. I had no idea. I faked my entrance exam, and it was because I had it memorized and I pretended as I was reading it. And it was, so I got in, I guess, because they had an empty slot, but it was again another quick education because my first day of general music theory class, he's just going over the cycle of force and fists, and everybody was like looking like, okay, get on to the good stuff, and I'm quickly jotting everything down, and it was just hieroglyphics to me at first. So I had a lot of catching up to do in the more formal, academic sense. But I also noticed that all of my student friends were not as free flowing in the creative side as I was. So they were really good at reading, really good at, at harmony and all of the duties of being a trained musician. And I was coming up with melodies on the spot and able to ad lib, and that's where they were suffering in the classes. So I saw my place. At first, I was feeling like like I was really in the wrong spot. But then once I saw that, oh wait, they have a lot of skill in this department, but I obviously have skill in this other side of things, and so that was a good balance for me. And then after 2 years, I just became bored because I caught up with the academics of it, and the band I was in was were playing around a lot, so I'm not really in the social scene at school. I was always leaving campus and going and playing places.
Right.
So it was my percussion instructor at the time. Uh, he said, I hear you are walking around the halls and you're not practicing your rudiments or any of that kind of stuff. You're always singing. And he said, why don't you just go be a singer?
Oh,
And,
wow.
and I just said, you mean you could just do that? And he said, just get in a van, take your boys and go hit the road. Because he had, and that was the best advice I ever got at college, was to quit and hit the road.
What college was this?
It was at the time Trenton State University, Trenton State College. Now it's University of New Jersey, I think it's called.
Oh, okay.
So it was just a quick, 2-year pit stop into school, which a lot of people at Berkeley do the same thing.
Yeah.
I sort of got my bearings and saw where I really wanted to go, and then used that as a launch pad. And so then spent many years making a living as a singer, sometimes playing drums, usually not. And, some very popular bands in the New Jersey, New York circuit, if you will. As back then there was a real lively club circuit. It was just incredible
Yeah.
how many clubs there were. And this is before MTV, before comedy clubs were big, before the internet, obviously. So the only entertainment for kids was to go out to a club
Yeah.
and see a band. And so we were playing a mix of our own material and covers. And I would have a line to get into 1,000, person venue on a Thursday night. And it was easy. It
That's so
was,
great.
and so it was, the only problem was it was so much fun that I lost 10 years of my life in a blink of an eye, because when you're a local hero, you get all the trappings that are intoxicating, with people, complimenting you, and lots of, crowds applauding. And it's a fun life for a 20-year-old. So I just, like I said, 10 years went by so quickly, because it was just a whole lot of fun. Then the drinking age changed there, and the clubs started to split their focus on comedy and dance music. EDM was coming in. It's like MTV was there, gaming, sports bars. It just split up, and so the rock bars that I was playing at started dropping one by one. Just for a clear example, there was 150 clubs in 100-mile radius of where I was. And
Wow.
so it was so if you couldn't get a gig, you were really bad, because there was a lot of clubs, and a lot of the bands made a lot of money, and
Mm.
it was just a really rich period. Great to be a green musician then. And
Wow.
that's kind of like what drew me up to Boston. So this is in New Jersey, New York area. And when I came up to Boston, I found the same thing. This was in '87. I came here, and there was a lively club scene. There was a lot of bands, and it was more focused on original, of course. The suburbs have all the cover bands, but in
Mm.
Boston proper, there was, the
Yeah.
Rat and Narcissus and Bun Ratties and the Channel and all these clubs that were um,
Right.
very popular, great places to play, but a really receptive audience to new material.
Mm.
Whereas usually in the suburbs, uh, they like to hear the stuff they're familiar with.
Wow.
So it was so going back and forth between covers and playing your own material, you get also schooled in how to connect with people and what resonates. And it is the cover songs kind of leave a blueprint for you as to what works in terms of radio play, because these are
Mm.
already successful songs. But it's also the priming factor of, if somebody is familiar with a song and you match it, they will finish it in their head. So as they're listening and you get close to the original, they're already dove in and will compliment you as a musician because you played it like Stevie Wonder, or you sound just like Van Halen. And so I always felt that was kind of a shallow compliment because I'm being complimented for reminding somebody of someone else.
I always thought it was a good compliment though, because it meant that your ears were getting tuned enough to pick up on the details that made that song or that version of that arrangement really cool. And now you're able to play it as well.
And so it seems like I see where you're coming from, but the listener's uh, detail list is very different than the detail list of a musician.
Tell me
And
more.
so when you know, speak to somebody and say, well, why do you like this song?
Oh
They're
yeah.
at a loss to explain it. It's a feeling they had. It's the gist of the song. And with singing, it was always if you could capture the timbre of a famous artist,
Mm.
like I said, the listener will finish it. They will glue in details that are not there,
Oh,
like
I see.
pitch accuracy. They'll fix the pitch in their own mind if it comes close and you represent the artist well in terms of timbre. Uh,
Mm.
you can forget lyrics, you can invert verses, and they will be unaware of that because it's too much to process
Right.
in one listening. Recordings are different, as obviously if you do a cover of something these days with videos, if you do a cover of something, people can listen to it over and over again and really get into the nitty
Right.
gritty with multiple viewings. But when you're playing a club and all you do is come close to an artist's representation, uh,
Mm.
people are fascinated that you can sound like so and so because they hold that artist to a high esteem. And here
Right.
you are coming really close. It's like, and this guy is in my pub. So that's fascinating to them that somebody so good would be so close. So it's a different criteria than musicians have of honoring
Right.
every little detail and you know
Yeah.
piece of a piece of work.
How much of the physicalness were when you sang? Were you with a guitar as well, or a bass, or were you the guy up front doing the?
I was the guy up front shaking my hiney, and that was another schooling I got because I was one of those drummers in the '70s that had a sea of drums in front of them. I had the
Wow.
huge drum kit with 13 toms and two big drums, bass drums, and
Wow.
an ocean of cymbals, so you could barely see my little curly hair sticking out from under it.
Yeah.
So when I came out front, I felt very naked.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
that's a wall of instruments to hide behind. But the complaint in the clubs was always, you know, we hear singing, but we can't see you when you're singing from behind the drum kit like that. My first solution was to turn the drum kit sideways. And so that worked for a little bit, but I got complaints again from club owners that they just love the standard routine of drums in the middle, singer out front. Is like, you know, they wanted the formula.
Yeah.
So every time I formed a band and did that, I just felt very awkward with myself physically. So that took a while to calm down. I had a very good singer friend that would be in the same circuit as me, and when he would come see my band, he always said, "Man, you look like a prison break. You're running around, the spotlight's following you, but you know, you'll get a better response if you can hold center court." And
Oh wow.
and he was absolutely right because I noticed that myself.
Huh. That's fascinating too, because they always say we're judged by how we look first. And then that singer, that lead singer, everybody's eyes go to that person. And then even if they're having a good time and moving really well, it doesn't matter if they're singing in tune, but they just
Exactly.
look the part, you know?
And so the job of the singer is to carry that big stick at first. We're talking live. And
Hmm.
so there is a vibe, literally. And the people, you know, in the audience have come to escape their rut. And so fans of classical music will go to the opera house, right? Because they want to immerse themselves in this magic. And so when they hear all the trappings of classical music, the orchestra's, you know, playing uh, the intro, uh, they release themselves over to that magic. And you
Mm.
go into a rock club and you get hit with the bass right in the gut, and the volume is incredibly loud. There's this primal sacrifice going on of like, I'm going to jump into this sea of people here. And it's, there's a communal effect there. So the band's first job is to create that communal thing, and that's the singer is the high priestess.
Yeah.
And so it's as the singer goes, so goes the audience. And if the singer is brooding and very emotional, the audience, the kind of people that are attracted to that will emerge and on down the line. So the singer kind of represents the vibe of the band,
Yeah.
and that's a lot of pressure for something that you really shouldn't contrive.
No, that's a very important part of the band, and yeah, it gives me a lot more respect for all the lead singers I've ever played behind, because you get so used to everybody ignoring you when you play that as soon as they start paying attention, it's like you almost can't even handle it. You
Yeah.
know, it's like that's a lot of attention on the lead person, and yet there they are carrying it on. When you
And
say,
I was just going to say, and the best singers are will be hard pressed to describe what it is about them that's attractive. In other words, when you're doing your job right as a singer, you're being yourself, and
mm,
that all the little quirks that make us unique are usually are invisible to us. You know, we'll see our flaws, we'll see things we don't like about ourselves appearance wise, and we'll hear it in our singing. And I often remind singers when I'm working with them of, you have an intention for your performance and it's here, and the reality is you're going to come shy of it as
mm,
your expectations are lofty. We all want 100% of what we're dreaming about. And so, you know, if you're good, you'll get 80 of it. You'll get 80% to occur. That's pretty damn good.
mm,
So in that gap of 20%, new singers will feel that the audience is aware that they're missing 20%. And the
mm,
reality is the audience has no idea what your intention is. They know this is what they saw, and they're assuming that was your goal.
mm.
So they perceive that gig as awesome, as perfect, as
Yeah.
amazing, because I watched a singer nail it song after song after song. They were amazing. And they go backstage and the singer will be like, "Oh, I can't believe you're here tonight. It's like, I missed this. Did you hear that chorus? That was horrible. I was flat here." They have a catalog of all the errors in their head, and
Hmm.
the audience is completely unaware of them
Yeah.
because they had
No
no
pun
idea what the
intended.
intention was in the first place. They're just getting the vibe. They're just getting the gist.
Yeah. And when you
Very important that we not advertise our dismay.
Yes, definitely. It's so hard to come out of that and to stay in that magic place. You know, just thank them and go home.
Two of the hardest words. Thank you.
No, but.
Exactly.
Yeah. When you say you were on the road with Kiss, it was
No,
the
the
original.
band I'd just gotten off the road with Kiss as an opening act.
Yeah.
And so that was my foray in. The management called me, told me all about this. So I,
Wow.
okay, they're coming off a tour with Kiss. I just struck gold.
Right.
And that was the last gig they had.
Oh. Oh.
Replaced that drummer, and then all this other nonsense happened with the management going to jail and the record label dropping them, and the sheriff coming. It was like, that was my introduction. So I heard all these glorious stories of being on the road, and I was like, I can't wait, and I had to wait because it didn't happen.
Oh
Right?
my goodness. When I first heard about you, it was you were the vocal coach to the Stars, and you still are.
I work with some incredible singers.
Yeah, yeah. Now, how did you turn all of this passion about creativity and being a musician into helping singers?
The story is this: when you're at a record company, you know, at an A&R office, and you slide your then cassette over of all your beautiful work that you worked so hard for, and they slide it back and they go, and he says to me over and over again, I've heard this, "Yeah, this, we're not really interested in this, but we really like you." And so, like, where do you put that? And I was asked twice by labels, different guys at labels and once at a publishing house to so literally like follow me there. So I take my material in, finally get an appointment with an A&R guy, think like, all right, I'm gonna make my pitch. And I make it and they're not moved by the song. And yet sitting there with them, they're like, there's something about you. You got a lot of energy. I like this, I like that about you. And I'm like, and I'm thinking, okay, so you're gonna work with me. This is great. And then they bring up a band that they would like me to work with. So if you could just go into the studio, we have a band that we have a lot of, investment in, and the singer is not really, I don't think he's got a lot of potential, but he's not really finding himself. And
Hmm.
I'd like you to go sit there as he's recording and see if you can help him a little bit. Literally, I was asked that multiple times.
Wow. How'd they know you'd have the ability to do that?
First off, that's an arrow to the heart because it's like, hello, then let
Sure.
me be a singer. It's like, if
Yeah.
that's not working, like, hello, I sing. And so that passed right over them. And other people saw something in me and that I didn't see in myself, nor value in myself. So I did just to try to make nice. I went to the studio, would work, just sit there literally next to the engineer at the soundboard and then hit the talkback mic and go, yeah, my friend, I think, you're just trying too hard. And all the stuff that I had been told, right, when struggling, and I did it back, right?
Yeah.
And then the engineer would look at me and go, yeah, it's working. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? It's like, I, I just uh, when they say things like you're meant to be or you're born to do this and all, I don't give that a lot of credit because I just think it's a passion that you follow. Uh,
Mm.
but I again have such a high regard for art and artists that I I was a little annoyed with the AR guys and management guys that were asking me to do this, but I was never annoyed with the musicians. Like I still just love hanging with musicians and
Mm.
singers, and I don't ever feel envious of anyone's success
Mm.
because for me, it's like that's you represent us all. And the more somebody can do something and create this huge public, persona, it's like it just I think helps the whole pool that's out down here.
That's
So
very cool.
So I guess I didn't weird anybody out that I was working with, and it was through that kind of leapfrog. I was taking voice lessons in New York City at the time, and uh, and that's where this was happening, sort of in New Jersey, in New York.
Mm.
And so at the time, the woman I was taking voice lessons from was Katie Agresta in New York City. She was wanting to expand. And so she was another person that said, I think you'd be a good teacher. And
Oh,
I took her place when she would go on vacation or have a thing. So I ended up working with some high profile people just as a substitute with her. And,
right.
and that made me feel like, it was just all things were pointing towards you should do this. And I
Mm.
was it all the way. I was like, no, I got my band. I'm writing my songs. It's rock star or die. It's like I'm still gonna do this. And so
Yeah.
there was a huge overlap. There was a real
Wow.
big, uh, a long period of my life when I was doing both kind of thing. And
Wow.
the book came from that want to. The book is the Rock and Roll Singer Survival Manual, which is now 30 something years old, um, older than that, actually. So, my point is, I wrote this book because I was getting asked so many questions about the voice, and I was getting my information a lot from classical circles because in that era, that's all that was available. And
As far as actual training of the voice.
yeah, and even Kate, very empathetic to singers. So she had kind of a niche in New York because she was working with rock singers, but she herself was classically trained, and so it was just always that culture coming, filtering down the classical culture, filtering down,
Mm.
and contemporary music that I sing and everybody I work with is such a different medium that it was annoying me that we didn't have the respect, number one, of either academia or of the doctors and people, and I like to ask a lot of questions. I'm a very curious person. So when I would ask a doctor about what makes the vocal folds inflamed, how do you lose your voice? Usually their answer back then was always like, well, that's just, knucklehead rock singers. You need classical training in order to not lose your voice. And I was like, that seems so biased to me. And it's biased. And so the point is that I kept pulling those threads saying, like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense that this one narrow genre of music have the patent on, balanced behavior. And it turns out to be the truth, but it was just promising. So I wrote this book because of the investigating I was doing about friction and the anatomy and kind of taking the musical bias away and just writing it straight. Then I put in the title was because I found it so hard to get straight answers as a rock singer that I wanted any singer to know is like, this is for you. This is going to be me telling it straight and simple without putting you on the Catholic, that was a Freudian slip, on the classical guilt trip of like, if you're really trained, they run into trouble. I took that book, I wrote it, I sold it, just to people I was, I had a little ad in the back of the Village Voice at the time, but I sent that book unannounced to Hal Leonard, which is a big music publisher.
Mm-hmm.
They they took it immediately and took it without one edit, took everything about it and just released it. In other words, I
Wow.
got a week later, they were very excited about it. And I was like, what is going on here?
Awesome.
But the point is, I've been slaving uphill with my songs and trying to get a publishing deal. And
Yeah.
then little side hustle I'm running is like keep screaming at me of like, this is easy. This like the world wants you to do this.
Wow.
And so I sort of softly surrendered to it. And I'm so glad that was 40 years ago now. And
Wow.
uh, the point being, the yes, the thing we do most naturally is going to resonate with others. The
Mm.
passion. And so, though I still love to write songs, I still love to perform. I have evolved as both a writer and a performer because of my teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Lessons I needed to learn to get better as a musician and an artist. The way I needed to do that was to teach. And
Mm.
that's the old Woody Allen line of those who can't do teach, and those who can't teach Jim. That was his quote. Point is, what I noticed in the beginning of when I started calling myself a vocal coach was that the people were just reflecting all the problems that I had struggled with also.
Mm.
It wasn't because I was such a great singer that I was helping them, it's because I really understood their struggle.
Yeah.
That you can't teach somebody. It's like I just figured I can explain what I did wrong and how now I'm, better at solving that problem. So it was really kind of a backdoor approach of how Mia usually presents it as you must learn all these things, you must be good, you must be better than your student, and be 1 degree above, so to speak, in order to be of mentorship to them. And I find the arts to be not true, simply because when you're there in the pit with somebody, it's just simply, well, this worked for me, or almost like when you're doing a co-write session, there's not a hierarchy there. It's just a communal experience, and you can get a lot from working with different people, and your songwriting will elevate just simply from listening to others, and
Mm.
they also will elevate in that same session. So everybody leaves that session a better songwriter, and the song you're working on might not be that good, but it's that those things we think that are just us are little gems for other people because they've
Mm.
not had our experience, they've not had our life.
Right.
When
But
we share
that's
it, it's like it now you put an extra jewel in their necklace, and so
Yeah.
wow, you get these great, this great neck piece that you can wear. It's just sageness, right? You've just absorbed other people's stories and other people's experience, and if you're open to it, you will grow exponentially. And I guess that's what I am. I'm just really open to learning all the time. So I always feel I learn as much from someone I'm working with as they learn from me.
Mm, that's awesome. But you also have the ability to communicate. That is something that not everybody who ends up teaching has, being able to actually explain what's going on or how you did what you did or what's going on in your voice as you're singing or how it feels for you, what they should be looking for or feeling, how they should go about it. They just go home and practice, just go home and do it.
I found was a lot of teachers are good, were very good at what they do, and then come to the point where unfortunately we're such a youth-based culture that their services aren't needed, for performances anymore. So
Mm,
the pasture is usually, oh, I'll go teach somewhere, I'll go give lessons then, as almost like a retirement plan. When I was coming up, that was always the view I had of like, teach, no, I'm still playing. It's like I'm not retiring yet.
right.
So to be, like I said, I feel like I came in through the back door because it wasn't through academia and it wasn't through being better than, it
Mm,
was through being more curious. And
mm,
my curiosity brought me to doctors and physical therapists and reading a lot of psych books and now neurology and psychology. And
wow.
I just don't think, singers coming up go through that deep of a dive into what makes them tick.
No.
Uh,
In
so,
fact, I think a lot of people try to be singers so they don't have to get into too much.
and there's value in that if you're good, but if you're not, something is inhibiting you. And so
Hmm.
if those walls of inhibition was what I was fighting through. They became more and more visible to me, and now they're extremely visible for me in others.
Hmm.
So those inhibitions are invisible to the person that's inhibited,
Yeah.
and uh, and so there's it all becomes the Wizard of Oz where you're getting what they already have, but just they didn't know it, right?
Right.
And an odd gig because all I'm doing is getting people to see that they're in their own way, and
Mm.
and the cost of that.
Yeah, huge. And it often comes down to breathing and the confidence you're talking about, or that self permission. So, what kind of aspects of those things, or how do you point them out gently and then start working on them with folks?
Usually by the opposite. If so, I always find that emotional issues are best handled physically,
Hmm.
physical issues are best handled emotionally. And
Wow.
so if somebody is tense, I could say just relax, all and give them exercises to relax. But I know that origin of that tension is emotional, and
Huh.
so I will then play 20 questions with people, saying like, what's going on behind the scenes. It's messy to ask people to lift the lid on their life and start to reveal. So I will first reveal, something about myself just so they know I'm not judging. I'm just saying if we want to cut to the chase here, and
Mm.
and there's very viable tension in your neck that's restricting your singing, but this is a tailspin you're in that did not start with tension. It's ending with tension. So
Mm.
for the core of that, we got to go back into your history and see what started that. It's just guarded behavior. It's
Yeah.
something threatening about singing for that person, and we got to find what it is. And so, vulnerability is very threatening to all of us. So usually
Yeah.
that's a first layer to try and peel away. But typically there's some episode, some trauma that's now stored, as a tension in a singer, and they're pushing through it. They're fighting through it because they have not faced, and trauma is a big overused word right now. Usually it's an episode of upset. It can be as lame as somebody just saying like, "Ew, you sound terrible," but an important figure in their life. And for me, it was my father. He was not happy with me pursuing music and especially singing. And what I would relay to people who have that struggle with a parent that's not supportive is I had to wait until I was 50 to discover that my father's, you know, uh, dismay at my singing was because he wanted to be a singer in the chorus at the Metropolitan Opera. And it got my mother pregnant, and his life took an adjacent turn. So he was very chagrined that he couldn't follow that. I was 50 when I finally got that out of him, and I was furious because I had spent from 10 years old till I spent 40 years swimming against this stream of negativity that I was
Mm,
like, wow, am I really that bad? Am I not, like how could some people be naturally good at something and I have to struggle so hard?
mm.
Made sense. And it was simply just, I had my father's voice in my narrative in there, caught just saying, he would often just say, it's just not meant to be. You don't have the DNA. We don't have the genes in this family.
Whoa.
Because that's what he had to tell himself. But that wasn't the way it was relayed to me. It was relayed of like, no, you're down the wrong path. We can't do this. We don't sing in this family. And
Wow.
we're not Pavarotti. We don't have those genes. And so obviously I've discovered a lot about genes and DNA and stuff because I was set on the wrong path, and so it allowed me to really have a deep understanding, because it was difficult to prove my father wrong. He was a really smart guy and very convincing, and
Mm,
just that was a tall mountain for me to climb, and
mm.
it was unnecessary to climb, but I chose to climb it. And
And
so
what did he want you to be?
anything, he was an engineer, so architect, something with a degree that you could hang on a wall and he could announce to his friends and be proud. And it, and I shouldn't say it like that. It's not like he wasn't proud of me, but it took him so long to acknowledge that I had reached a certain status in my field,
Mm-hmm.
like just before he died. And so it was just a long personal struggle I had with him. And
Yeah.
that's not uncommon. I hear stories
No.
a lot, and
Yeah.
bringing it up because it's so common, not that I'm
Right.
special. And so
Yeah.
when I start, revealing my story, I hear a lot of the same story. It was a mother or an aunt or somebody, or a favorite school teacher that then really put the curse on them by saying like, I don't think you're meant to do this kind of thing.
Mm,
Adults have such power over children that they do not realize.
I know.
So often when I say like my father was just pissed that he didn't get to be a singer, and then he put that on me, and he didn't mean to, but he didn't realize that his words were really narrow in their scope. And what I often say to people is that chorus you got kicked out of, that director probably just missed her coffee that day, and she was just really annoyed and kind of gave you the axe because she was frustrated or had a fight with her.
Yeah.
Like they're human. And so
Yeah.
not mean for that dart to stick forever. And what we tend to do is we just keep putting it back in our heart, right?
I know. Keep reminding ourselves of this limitation.
So
It's
we
crazy.
train in the limitation.
Yeah.
And so getting someone to see not their episode, but just that stuff that people do, that we train in limitation, right? That
Mm.
opens the topic for me. So it's a little easier for people to talk about.
Hmm.
I often have very deep discussions, if allowed, with people I'm working with, and I find those to be more productive for their skill set than the drilling of exercises.
Absolutely.
Because then when we get to singing, it is so clear that they've taken a little of the rubble out of the way and have a better path to let the sound through.
Yeah. Because if they're all tense and choking it off and it's all emotional, you can train that instrument as much as you want, but it's still choked and cut off and unemotional. uh, Wow.
So on the opposite side, what I said before was, if somebody has an emotional issue, some people will come to me and they're clearly just freaking out, very anxious, and admittedly, they'll tell me, I take this for my anxiety, I take this for depression. I'm just so with
Mm.
that kind of situation, I'm always like, okay, we're not touching that. You just your mouth. You just need as a baby breathes, you just need to be able to move your head because when you're
Mm.
on lockdown, and so I'll go through simple physical actions with them as they
Wow.
sing, and there's constant feedback loop going on. So the brain is always assessing the us, but so the body is communicating to the brain, and if breathing is calm, the body is saying to the brain, "We're good," and if the
Mhm.
breathing the body is saying to the brain, we're freaking out right now. And so the brain will run with that and then say, okay, let's get out of here. Let's stop this guy from singing. Let's, what have you.
Get
Shut
it
down,
done.
make the mouth dry, stop this high note from coming out. So interrupted, and whichever way at any point, it doesn't matter. A loop is a loop. So anywhere you can interrupt it, it just disrupts that communication line. And then
Yeah.
little bit of tidbit of peace.
And you can get people out of that stuck groove that they've built so deeply and feel so comfortable in.
Exactly. They know it well.
Ah.
And so I feel for everyone, that I work with just simply because I see myself. It's like I've been there.
Yeah, yeah. I heard Benny Greb say that. He's a drummer. He said the whole reason drummers rush their fills is because they hold their breath before they start the fill, and the brain goes, "There's no oxygen. Hurry up and finish." And that's why they speed up.
So this is cool too, because my drumming has improved a lot because of singing.
I'm sure.
So has my basketball, so has, and my drumming now influences my singing positively, as does riding a motorcycle well does. It's like after when you get to a certain mindset, everything helps everything
Yeah.
because goal is the same. Where's the ease in this action?
Did you ever read that book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
A long time ago, yes.
Me too. That was really cool.
So it's all just those universals, truths, right? It's like
Yeah, yeah,
once you get to a certain place of observation, you see the similarity in everything, and that's comforting because it's like, all right, this makes a lot of sense now.
yeah. Underneath it all, there's reliable truths and checks and balances, I guess, and power. If you could
Yeah,
just tap into the power. Like I was saying on another chat recently, I was saying to somebody, I often tell my students to try to channel their favorite artists or players so that they could step into their shoes for a minute and feel that greatness. And the person I was talking to corrected me and said, "Just remember who you are. I mean, you're a spirit. You're a god. You're infinite intelligence. You have access to everything. Like, just be your real self." And I'm like, it's the same thing in a way because, but like some people can't even go to their favorite artist, let alone go be a god.
so that those kind of sayings, people say that to me so often of like, you're just in the way. When I was a young struggling singer or struggling drummer, it was like, you're in your own way. And I was like, yeah, but when I get out of the way, I sound worse. So I was overthinking everything, and
Yeah.
so
Well,
it's just
because they point out all these things you should focus on, and sometimes they're in the wrong order, or they stump the part that was naturally working. Now you're thinking of too many things, and it's stumping their computer.
got it.
There's so many things to think about and do. But I remember hearing when I was a student at Berkeley, uh, if you want to paint the perfect picture, make yourself perfect and paint naturally. And for many years, I was like, what the hell does that even mean? But I think it's talking about the same thing. It's like, get out of your way, have fun, remember that you're a wizard, Harry, and just paint.
The flow.
Yeah, that flow. I remember feeling that flow at 10 years old. I don't know how it happened. All of a sudden, I was just in this other space and I started writing songs, and it was the coolest feeling ever. And it was like, I just want to do this forever. I just love this. But you probably feel it with a lot of things. You probably feel it on the motorcycle. You feel it when you're teaching with a certain connection. You
Yeah.
certainly feel it when you're drumming and singing.
Again, I'm spread out because I love to make furniture. I like to paint. I love
Oh,
to.
wow.
I I am I love creating, and so it doesn't matter what realm that is. And
That's so
so,
cool.
um, so it so I could teach furniture building if I had a better skill set. I've always got all these irons going, so I always have 3 songs that I have yet to finish, and a piece over here I'm building in my wood shop, but not done yet. And so I'm
That's good.
but I'm happy because, or I'm content is a better word. I'm content because I know whichever I'm interested in, I can go this way and work on a chorus of a song. And usually when I'm doing that, I go, oh, now I know how to do the joint on that table that I'm building. And when the table, I'm like, oh, now I know how to finish that chapter I'm writing. Okay, so it's because of peripheral in creativity, right? It's like the
Yeah.
thing you sometimes it's it's too close to see, but it's in this peripheral that I'm like, oh, I got a great idea for that song.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's because the other things are allowing your alignment and
Exactly.
you're getting right back into the flow, and then you go, oh, there it is.
Lucky enough to have a lot of creative muses because that keeps the creativity flowing. So it's often I'll open up my email in the morning. I get a lot of questions from singers, and sometimes I'll just feel bogged down. It's like, oh, this is a complicated thing to explain, and then I'll start watering my plants out in front of my house or something. And then a simpler way to answer that email will come to me. And I'll literally put the hose down and go finish the email.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to trudge it out at that moment. It would be a convoluted answer and wouldn't be so concise. So
Yeah,
stepping away, I find to be really helpful.
that's a really good point because when I was younger and I felt like, I don't want to do this right now, I would feel like, oh, maybe you're uh, flubbing it off and you're not doing what you should do right now. You should answer this. It's like, but if you don't have the answer, it's better to wait for it to come, you know?
And so grace, I'm a huge fan of when something is done gracefully. And
Mm,
I try to, so I try to uphold that as best as possible.
that's
And
very cool.
get, an answer I'm contriving, and I'll be like, yeah, this is hackneyed. And I'll just wait for a more graceful answer. And usually it's a single sentence, whereas a paragraph, at first seemed to be conveying the answer, but usually great at that. She would look at my writing. She was an English teacher and of creative writing, and she would tap her red pen on my manuscript, and she'd be like, she'd read a paragraph. She's like, "What are you trying to say?" And just repeat a little tiny sentence. And she's like, "Why don't you write that?" It took being challenged like that. So after a
Yeah.
while, I hear my mother's voice a lot, and I'll have a convoluted way to say something, and then be like, "What are you trying to say?" Blah blah blah. Well, just say that.
But we
More
have to learn that. We have to learn that as a process or even as a segue into something. Because I'll even do that with lyrics sometimes. It's like, well, what would Paul McCartney write here? Or how would Stevie Wonder finish this bass line? Or, it's like there's something about that which I think maybe helps that peripheral flow that you're talking about.
agree.
That's so cool.
Take pressure off. How would this one do it? How would that one do it?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of folks forget that we're all made out of the same stuff and that we're all human and we're all probably as equally as creative, but some of us allow it and allow that greatness, and a lot of us stand in the way of it so that we think we're not as good.
Agreed. I also find equally human is that longing for connection and
Yes.
longing for beauty. Sounds surface because we now have such a surface definition of beauty, but in the realm of, ancient times, beauty must have been so magnificent to them. Uh,
Hmm.
nature or a or somebody who's constructed well for that culture must have been godlike because because it would be so rare, because it would be so hard. Life was so hard, and
Huh.
now so spoiled with so much beauty and so much that it becomes diluted in the noise of fat, dumb, and happy. We are so spoiled as a species that it's hard to appreciate the hilarity of something beautiful.
Well, it's like you were saying before with the children who may not have been encouraged before. A lot of us ended up with a lot of jet fuel to say, I'll prove you wrong,
Mm.
and go out and do it anyway, or a stick-to-itiveness that was unshakable because of all that negativity. Whereas there have been generations now where children have been taught, you're so great and you're so wonderful right from the beginning, and anything you want to do is possible, that they're afraid to try anything because they don't want to fall from that title of being great.
Exactly. I see that every day too. I'm sure you do. And it's a disservice.
Yeah, and who knew? I don't really know where that comfort place is, because it seems like no matter how somebody was brought up and they try to do the opposite for their kids, they get a different kid that didn't need that info. They needed a different info. Or
Yes.
it's like, teacher evaluations. You,
So in other words, parents are always wrong.
yeah, right. But what's interesting too is that they haven't given up on that youth culture thing, because that youth culture wasn't here in the early 60s. It was the Beatles that brought that youth culture where they started paying attention to these young ones. And now they keep thinking that the formula is still to find the four young guys. And it's like, no, that happened once. It's not a
Right.
formula.
Exactly. And so it just culture is invisible to us, but it is our program. It's our out.
Mm,
And so we are all abiding by whatever culture we're immersed in. And it's important for artists to try and pull up from there because that's how we move the culture along. Is the artists of the century have always been the Sherpas, if you will, guiding us to the next place.
right? I love how you brought up connection, though, too, because I mean, that's why I started just wanting to talk to some friends that were in other countries and around this country. I was like, I just need more company. But what other ways do you feel connected?
The connection for me is, like I said, I feel connected to music or or anything because I know that it's a bottle that I'm sending out into the ocean with a
Mm,
message that will find somebody will find it. We'll be connected. I won't be there, but
mm,
I'm connected to the song I write because I know someday maybe someone will hear this. Or, with the stuff I write and now with the videos I post about singing, I feel connected to people I've never met. Uh,
mm.
and it's a great feeling because I know I because I don't ever feel alone because I know I'm connected to a wide array of artists, and I often feel lonely, but that's a chemical imbalance in me that I used to identify as a problem, and now I see it just as like somebody who has asthma. It's with they would rather not, but so we all have a chemistry in our brains that
Mm,
can elicit certain feelings, and if we
yeah,
allow feelings to run us, um, it can be trouble.
definitely, definitely. Have you heard of Dana Wilde?
Yes. How have I heard?
She does a brain training podcast and for entrepreneurs.
Sounds familiar.
Really good. You'd probably really like her stuff, and the teachings of Abraham Hicks. But yeah, I think there really is, we're certainly chemistry sets, and so there really is an imbalance, and it's easy to get that out of balance.
Mm,
But there's also those grooves, like that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know, right? where there's so many grooves of feeling lonely that I have, or melancholy, or, if you look at all the bad things going on in anybody's life or in the world, you could just stay in overwhelm.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah. And
So
it's not a healthy place to be.
I've learned to view the alarm that's constantly going off in my head. Learned to view it as my neighbor's car alarm.
That's so good.
I don't need to respond to it because it's
Yeah.
not, I hear it in the background, but I don't have to, it's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
I
And
obey that
if it's
time.
gonna knock you off your game and keep you from being your best self for all the people that are depending on you, you're not helping anybody by
Yeah.
getting all upset by it. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, when you live in a city, you hear a lot of alarms and you train your brain not to respond to them.
Right.
Live out in the country somewhere quiet and you hear an alarm, you're like, whoa, what's going on?
Exactly. I also like that you have so many creative outlets. I guess somebody might add up some of mine and think that they're all different outlets as well, and maybe they are diversions, like writing a song, playing a few different instruments, recording the parts, loving to arrange or sing all the all the vocals and the backgrounds, um, producing, mixing, mastering, that kind of thing.
Because
But
don't you feel some days I just feel like mixing today. I'm not gonna
yes,
write.
and I go, what have I got? Anything ready?
And to mix on those days you feel like mixing, that's a good mix.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
will be detail, right? And on the day you feel like writing, that's not a good day to mix.
It also takes a little doing and getting to know yourself as to which one is calling today. Sometimes I even just ask myself, okay, what would feel the most fulfilling to do right now? What's calling me, or what feels the most fun? And
Yeah,
just wait for that little answer.
you and I, that's an extremely luxurious place to be, right? That you have
Yeah,
the which one calls, right? But then you have classes to teach, I have lessons to give, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
at some point, 12 o'clock comes and I got a student coming in. So the idea for me is always, I I'm always open to the people coming in,
Mm,
and I've learned if I do that, then my day takes these wonderful journeys because I'll have,
mm,
bunch of students in a single day, and not one of them will have a repetitive, there won't be a repetitive lesson in there. So there'll be a beginner or somebody very advanced. There'll be somebody how to
mm.
house, and that's a whole lesson becomes about that. And somebody else will have a song that's really kicking their ass. And so it's just my day, because of that ability to say to yourself, okay, where will I let this lead me? I do the same thing when I teach. I say, okay, whatever the student brings in, that's what we're going to address. And
Mm-hmm.
of me having like lesson one plan, lesson two plan, lesson three plan,
Yeah,
I I teach in a reverse fashion of just seeing where I can be of most value on in that hour that I'm going to be with somebody.
that's great. That's what I love to do too. I mean, we have a curriculum we have to get through, but sometimes they're ready for a different thing
Yeah,
on a different week, and it's just better to roll with what's flowing.
I find that. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember writing to you when Paul McCartney's voice started to change, and you were saying it's definitely something in the brain and it could help. Like I was saying, could you help him? You said sure, but he'd have to want to. Um,
Somebody as successful as he at such an early age, you gotta respect the program. That was the golden vocal program he was running. That man could sing. And
yeah.
so so his now now you're his brain, and the body parts aren't responding as they did when he was 30, let's say.
Mm, yeah.
There is very little inspiration for the brain to adjust to the instrument he has today. It is it's running that program that got him to be a legend. And I find that to be true with a lot of older trained singers. And I'll hear the lament over and over again. but I never had to work on this before. My voice would always respond like this or always respond like that. And I always answer with, yeah, I never had to wear readers before either. Our bodies are changing. And
Yeah.
if the brain is calibrating along with that instrument, so you will be able to sing at a ripe old age. But if you're not calibrating, it will seem, and there'll be evidence that, oh yeah, aging and singing don't go together. The epithelial layer, the layer on the outside of the fold, loses its collagen, loses its elasticity. Hydration is an issue. The muscle fibers aren't as elastic. There's many things that you can, sort of like tilt the scales to say like, yeah, you're just getting old. That's all there is to it. But this thing that we're always calibrating for is the voice is so tied to identity that the brain has a very hard time adjusting the pitch, the medial speech range, the amount of movement. We've got an actuator, that's the air that stimulates. We got the vibrator right here, the larynx, which has the vocal folds inside. Then we've got a resonator. And these properties are, every acoustic instrument has the same three properties. And then we have an articulator up here that like a wah-wah pedal, right?
Yeah.
It's 8 sounds coming through us, and we've become so identified with our voice that I had to learn to speak when I really started teaching, big time. So I'm always 12 hours, so from 8 in the morning till 8 at night, just talking, and singing. So I use my voice nonstop, and I had to make an adjustment in the way I speak early on because I used to lose my voice teaching.
Wow.
And not really cool for a voice coach to lose their voice.
Good point.
Like, for what's that called? Proof of viability or whatever that, what they say in Shark Tank all the time. Proof of concept. So back when I had the overlap, I was gigging and teaching. I would start to lose my voice during the day because I was talking so much, and then get it back as I'm warming up for my gig, because the vocal exercises were my ritual. I knew what I should sound like when I'm doing them, so that would always sort of save my voice. Was the 3 hours of singing I did at night would bring my voice back, and then I would teach for about 6 hours at those days, in the day, and start to lose it and then get it back. So that cycle, I needed to break that cycle. And it was simply how I was allowing myself to speak. I also think there was a factor in there of I was trying to prove to myself that I could teach. So that load was on my voice. And once I lifted that emotional burden and changed the physical nature of my speech, I have never had a problem. I'm 67 years old, and I'm not had any issues speaking all day and then singing all night.
Wow.
So it's really just a matter of, if you allow your brain the freedom to calibrate to the instrument you have today, because this includes menstruating for females, includes allergies, which I have right now. It includes colds, COVID, all these things. As a singer, you're going to get hit with it all. And so the instrument's going to change. So make is a lot like obtaining a different used guitar every day.
Wow, that's a great analogy.
To play that day. So if I get a different guitar, the action might be terrible on this one. The soundboard might be cracked, so it gets a weird, or it might be a beautiful instrument. And so singers have to explore the instrument they're waking up with, because relative humidity, diet, sleep, there's just such a huge list of influences.
Yeah.
And mostly I can take my voice to where I want it to be. So it's pretty consistent day in, day out. But on the odd day that it's not where I'd like it to be, I make sure I use comfort first as my guide. So I'm asking my brain, like, find where my voice is comfortable, and we'll start from there. So I'll ask more and more of the control of my voice or the range of it, but you have to start with what's comfortable first. Often people will start with that same old just oh man, it feels terrible. See what's doing? It's just all that. And I'll watch people just grind away, and it's really just their brain taking that square peg and jamming it into a round hole. And
Yeah.
like, okay, whoa, 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 time out, time out, time out. You just ate something really delicious. Like, what sound would you make? It's not going to be, it's going to be something a little, something more delicate, more communicating happiness and bliss. What
Higher
does
pitch.
brain will find that if you can really imagine yourself eating something delicious. And, if that doesn't, I have other triggers. But the point is, the procedure needs to change from comfort down instead of familiar up.
That's so great. So great. Because, there's a point in the day if I'm just working and mixing and not talking all day, there's a very sleepy voice. It's like waking up in the morning, and it even hurts to talk. You don't even want to talk. And I realize if I just play or talk and come different pitches, these are very easy, but I don't talk up here. But that would be a better place to start the vocal exercises.
It's the same in my legs when I sit all damn day, right? When
Yeah.
I make a grown man noise because I'm not stretching my legs and as I should. And so
Yeah.
just like the stretching of the vocal membranes,
Mm,
talking up there, right? That's no different than doing our yoga in the morning. So
mm,
the idea of stretch, the comfort of ease, right? That's just a different doorway in than
fantastic.
and using
That's
a
so bad. Yeah.
so common.
I remember hearing James Taylor say that the voice is just a muscle and you just have to use it. You have to keep exercising it. And then certainly all the videos I watch of yours just keep reinforcing it's use it. Use it and take care of it. And I love hearing the comfort moment there. That's perfect.
Because every time I hear someone say that the voice is a muscle, it clicks off in my brain. The voice is a community of muscles.
Mm.
And so it's relationships. And any relationship, you can have an off moment. And so the are reflecting that, their actions are reflecting that.
Mm.
Just the singularity of that image of like your voice is like your bicep. You just gotta, exercise it. Voice is like your arm, including your fingers. There's all these ligaments and all these muscles. Same
Wow.
pharynx. And so you can make beautiful things happen with your hand, or you can put it in a sling and just, like put it in dry dock for the day.
Mm.
Relationships occur inside our body in the same way they occur outside our body and in our lives, in other words. And so the relationship of air pressure to fold resistance, the
Mm.
relationship of the coupling of this acoustic cavity above to the vibration. So in other words, if the pitch and the pipe don't match, that relationship becomes very antagonistic. Whereas if the pipe was tuned like a church organ, right? All the pipes are tuned to each pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Your throat to the note you're speaking or singing, you've got this grace all of a sudden. You got this relationship that is creating flow. When the air is proportionate, that's great. So it's more that the voice is a series of relationships and we're looking for flow. So if anytime I don't feel flow, I'm asking, okay, where along the river is there a tree falling that's kind of blocking the flow?
Yeah.
Relationships all the way down to my feet may be interfering with this flow I'm trying to achieve between inspiration and phonation.
Wow. What about mic technique? I noticed once I got better microphones and better preamps that all of a sudden I had mouth noise in my recordings, and I never really had that before. I guess they were there and I wasn't hearing them.
And so I'm a big advocate of internalizing mic technique, that if you're using pull away stuff and then you're allowing antagonistic behavior to exist in your phonations.
Hmm.
And when you think about those boy bands or Britney Spears or that era when they had the wig mics, the headset mic,
Hmm. Yeah.
singers couldn't pull away on the high notes. They couldn't, do anything. So they had massive amounts of compression on
Mm.
this, right? And and so learning, my analogy is always instruments are always mic'd and the mic never moves,
Hmm.
especially drum kit, right? So those mics along the toms and the snare, when the part calls for me digging into the snare drum and really whapping it, the engineer doesn't come out and pull the mic away. Stays close mic'd. And when I'm doing ghost notes, mic's exactly where it is because
Yeah.
dynamics are a big part of playing the drums.
Right.
So same with singing. So, back when I performed a lot towards the end there, I would sound check and the mic would be very close to my mouth. And I would say, turn this off. I'll give you my hottest signal. You
Wow.
the mic to this so that I don't need to work the system so much. Often I find people using mic technique as a adjunct to singing technique.
Yeah. I'm specifically talking about the studio, though. Like, I even heard that Roy Orbison sang very, very quietly. Like, you'd almost have to be right up next to him to hear him singing, whether he was live or in the studio.
Absolutely, same thing with Shania Twain, many singers,
Yeah.
uh, very soft.
Suzanne Vega, I would think half the time she was speaking, how could they get her out over the band? You
Yeah,
know, it's,
the Billie Eilish, that breakthrough album,
yeah.
Spring, off just like just barely coming out of her mouth.
Wow.
So, the point is, those are appropriate sentiments and sounds for that music, right? And then
Right.
you guys like Bruce Springsteen, they're just hollering into the microphone. Uh, don't need to be loud in a recording situation, right? But the point is, that's how the song goes. That
Mm.
is warranted.
Yeah, energy.
When the signal should be loud, I'm all for it. Lean in. And when the signal should be soft, that's you know that's what people are responding to is the physicality of singing and
Mm.
as primal as drums. So in a mix, if you hear a snare drum that's hit hard but it's buried in the mix, there's still no doubting that that drum was hit soundly.
Mm.
Hear somebody yelling in the background of a mix like black hole sun, and he's screaming in the back of that chorus, but it's buried in the mix, and its energy of it is what gives that haunting feeling of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet verse of that, Alton man, he's just really conversational in those verses, and his
Right.
voice, incredible lovely timbre, because because you sense the horsepower that's available to him, but he's not utilizing it.
People have said that compliment to me many times, like, wow, it's amazing how much restraint you have to hold back uh, and not overblow anything or overplay or oversing. And I'm like, I don't have tons of power. When I was like 5 years old and younger, I had the highest, squeakiest, loudest voice, and I was probably told to shut up constantly. And then I remember being like 10 years old and playing guitar a whole year, writing my own songs, and my dad being so proud, putting me on a table with my guitar and a chair to
Uh,
play for like family reunions, and like 150 people clamoring around me going, "Can you sing any louder? We can't hear you, Lauren." And you'd be like, "Ah." It's been like an ongoing theme, like you were saying about your dad, because it was great. He was so proud, but who knew anything about a sound system? Like, give the
actually,
kids some support.
where's the roadie when you need it?
Yeah.
Is
All
there
right.
like to say or ask as a wrap up?
Just thank you so much. It was so cool. I feel like we could even just hang out, and it would be a great hang.
Thank you for asking me.
It was awesome, and I'm so happy that you got into specific things and things that matter so much, not only to you personally, but to singers everywhere. So definitely tell everybody to get your stuff and go onto YouTube and check it all out.
Yeah, my YouTube channel, I guess, would be the best place because there's a lot of videos about all types of things. There's plenty of exercises there, but also the psych and the neurology of singing, which I think
Yeah.
is important. So voicelesson.com is the location.
Fantastic. It was great, Mark. Thank you so much.
Chris,
Good to see you again. Take care.